Can you all see that? I'll take a nod. Thank you.
Mhm.
My name is Tracy Siegel. I'm a customer success team lead for Zencity. And today what we wanted to do is share with some of our users across the US in all different cities and counties how some of our other clients are using Zencity to create regular reports and who they're sharing them with and what they're doing with them. We get this question a lot about, how do we use this data? How do we make it actionable? How do we present it to important stakeholders? And we have a number of clients who are doing this in different ways. And I'm so pleased to have them here to share that with you. So thank you. We have Whitney Skillman, who's here from Fairfield, California, Carla Banks from Greensboro, North Carolina, and Jessica Fisher from Spokane, Washington. So I'm really excited to have them here today. And like I said, what we're going to do is hear from each one of them. This is going to be a really practical workshop. So really just going through, what they're doing, how they're using it. And then we'll summarize those tips from them and then have Q&A. So you can feel free to ask questions at any time in the Q&A or through the chat. We'll answer them at the end. So we'll make sure to go through all of them and answer them at the end. And like I said, this is going to be super practical. So if you're even wondering, where do you click and what do you do? Those are things that we can answer here today. So let's get started with Fairfield. So Whitney, take it away.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. For those of you who don't know, Fairfield is located exactly halfway between Sacramento and San Francisco. And our claim to fame is the Jelly Belly factory. That's where our headquarters are here. So just to give you some context. So I really love Zencity. It's a great tool. I honestly wish I had an entire team to be able to use it more. But unfortunately, like a lot of you, our team consists of mostly me for social media. So hopefully as we get to expand, we'll be able to use more of the tools in Zencity. But what I love most about using Zencity is that it allows me to have an instant snapshot of what's going on, not just in our city, but regionally. So for me, this accomplishes 5 things. It gives me a broader picture of what's happening in my city and in my region. It kind of rings the alarm in case something is bubbling up, if there's discourse around a certain topic that I'm not aware of, or I can kind of see what's happening. It informs the type of messaging that we need to deliver to engage our residents. It exposes my weak spots so I can make adjustments, what I'm missing, where I'm missing it, that type of thing. And it helps provide a really more in-depth analysis of popular subjects or events. So using the dashboard, I can easily see what people are talking about as a whole, or I can break the information down by time period or subject. So the dashboard is always where I go. It's kind of where I live most of the time, unless I'm checking on something specifically. The nice thing about the dashboard too is that I can quickly gauge sentiment, topics, and sources just by looking at the dashboard. So when creating reports, this is really helpful because, like I said, it gives me a better context of what's going on our social platforms, especially when I'm trying to translate and kind of break that information down for for my boss or for my colleagues who aren't necessarily aware of how analytics work or what they mean. Can I go to the next slide, please? Oh, we're on the next slide already. So sorry, can I go back to the last slide? Thank you. Okay. So as the only person actively working on social media for a city of over 115,000, using Zencity makes my job 1,000% easier. When I need to create a report, I simply go in to the dashboard and I toggle back between official and unofficial channels. And on my reports, I really like to include both official and unofficial information so we can really see if our messaging is hitting the mark as compared to what people are talking about. Because we can be talking about public safety all day and people might not necessarily be talking about that, in my community or in my region. And if we're talking about something and everyone's talking about something else and we're completely like crossing paths, and it's not as effective as it could be. It also helps me see who's dominating the discourse and kind of brainstorm as to how we can leverage their platforms to help spread our messages or even shared messaging. So, for example, I don't know how your social media platforms might work, but our safety social media platforms pretty much dominate the discourse for our entire city. They started earlier than we did. They have a lot more followers than we do. So anything they put out there almost every week without fail, public safety is top of the discourse, at least officially. So, like I said, it's really good because it can help me kind of see what we're talking about, what's getting out there as opposed to what's going on in our community. And, I might reach out to police and fire and say, hey, I have this really important message to share on COVID or vaccination or the CARES Act funding. I need you to push his messaging out. So that's kind of one of the ways that we might kind of cross promote or share on different platforms, which really helps. So I create a month over month report for the PIO, which allows us to quickly see what's changed, of course, month over month, and to make real-time adjustments or recommendations for future messages. Can I have the next slide, please? And one last way that I really love to use Zencity, or something that I really appreciate Zencity, is that it provides monthly insights, which can be things that I ask about or want to know about, or if not, they're reports that are auto-generated. Kind of, I'm assuming they're based around the discursive volume, what's received the most chatter or conversation in the past month. So this is super helpful. Last August, we were in crisis mode. Our area experienced the 4th largest fire in California's history. So during this event, we were so busy putting out messages. There were evacuation warnings, there were evacuation orders. We were constantly updating and changing everything. And obviously, because it was a fire, fire and PD were kind of out physically on the front lines. So we were trying to get the messaging out to let people know, like, obviously this is what's going on. So I didn't really have time to like go into Zencity and look at the dashboard and see what was happening. And even if I had time, everything was changing so quickly, it probably wouldn't have mattered at that point. But the following month, I received this insight from Zencity, which really pinpointed to us kind of what was happening during the LNU fire and where the messaging broke down. So this is super important. I sent this off to the fire chief and let him know. I also sent it to the police PIOs and let them know, we're having a breakdown and people don't know, where to go. They're getting mixed messages. So that's something that we can definitely work on for the future. And what happened there too, it was also a little difficult because we were getting reports or information was going out from other media sources all around our region, not necessarily us. So that's another reason why it's really so important, as you work on social media, that we become the subject matter experts on our cities and our areas, so people know, like, if something is happening, they need to come to us because we're the ones who have the most accurate, most timely information. And then the last slide, please. So whenever I receive a highlight, I email it off to the corresponding department head, and they're really grateful to have this extra information. I also do my month over month report to my PIO, and he would usually pass it on to the city manager, who may in turn pass it on to council members. And I think it's really important because obviously with social, you can look at your analytics, you can see how much engagement you're getting, but you don't also really necessarily know how that translates. People who aren't familiar with analytical terms or social media analytics don't really understand like necessarily what those terms mean, but it's kind of just an appreciation, like, hey, we're making this effort. We may not know, or we may know, we may have gotten 50,000 likes and shares. However, this translates to our community feels, 30% positive about this information, or 50% negative, which is something that's a little more relatable and understandable. And I think it also stresses to them the importance of collaboration, especially between departments, when they can see, what we're trying to do and the wealth of information that we have at our fingertips, and how important it is to collaborate to really make use of this tool and actually just really push our social media platforms. So I think that's all I have. So hopefully that was a little bit helpful. The reports are super simple. Anyone can do them. I just do them on a Word doc, or you can use an Excel spreadsheet. So that's it.
Thanks, Whitney.
Of course.
So what I love about your reports is So you'll see some different versions and different things going on with Carla and Jessica next. But your reports are monthly or by event, like you said, and they're kind of doing a more long term look, which is something I love that you can do in Zencity. That it's not just the day to day, what's going on right now in the dashboard, but you can look at trends. You can look at month over month, what has changed, what's different now, or take an event like the one you had and kind of evaluate it after the fact and see the whole big picture as opposed to just, what's happening in the here and now. And that's something that I think is really great in what you're doing.
Definitely. Thank you.
So now we're going to turn to Carla from Greensboro. Carla, do you want to introduce Greensboro a bit and then talk about your reporting?
Yes, thank you, Tracy. Thank you for the invitation. Greensboro is literally centrally located between Charlotte and Raleigh. We are the third largest city, Charlotte being the first and Raleigh being the second. So if you're driving anywhere in the triad is what we call this area, you're going to put us right smack dab in the middle of Raleigh and Charlotte. It's interesting. We have our own airport, but they do as well. So it's interesting to see how many people are willing to drive to either one of those airports instead of using Greensboro's airport, which is so much easier to navigate. But that's kind of an inside joke within the Greensboro community. Our population, I will think it's going to go up after the census numbers, but 300,000 is pretty much where we hover at, and we are called a small big city. So it's not overpowering, but it's just big enough. From the Zencity perspective, we're going into our second year. Initially, I think we intended to use this differently than what we're using it now. So it was kind of intended to be more long range monthly snapshots at bigger projects that were going on across the city. Then as we explored and really discovered what Zencity was capable of doing, it became more of something that we do on a daily basis. And the reason being, I'm the only department head who is embedded in the city manager's office, which puts me extremely in close proximity to our city council. So we're a council manager form of government. The city council is obviously the boss of our city manager, but then he oversees the department heads and just the administrative day to day. We have 9 city council members. They're distinguished between districts. So 5 of the 9 have their own district and the other 4 are at large. So they pretty much are the entire city. What we have found is that while we can track the bigger picture projects and get sentiment on what people are thinking of some of the projects that we do, it's the daily reporting that we focus on key subjects that we feel would be of interest no matter which district each council person is in. That's why the reports are sent out to city council, also department heads, but also a handful of our supervisory employees with key departments that often pop up in some of the news feeds. And with water resources, it's primarily a combination of things. When there's a water main break or there's been some kind of disruption of service that can impact larger sections of the city at a particular point in time. So being able to track people's response to our response in terms of fixing things is important. But overall, I think based on how we've changed how we're using Zencity, the feedback has been positive, and really we wanted to give City Council real-time information on certain things that may appear from an email perspective in their inbox to be a major issue, that then we can go and look at the reality of it and gauge the sentiment and offer up some feedback in terms of what is the broader group of people saying about something, so that it helps us to respond and not be overreactive at times. And we were doing a lot of overreacting prior to Zencity. So we're very grateful for that. Next slide, please. The daily reports are really just an overview. So it's intended to be an opportunity to kind of hit some of the headlines of the day, but also remind council and our department heads of the information that we produce internally and push out. And then the Zencity reports are attached so that they're able to see the graphs and they can kind of look at the meter of each topic. So we try to stay centered to the things that are really key right now, because several of our departments overlap in the COVID response. And then we have other issues referencing public safety, in particular violent crime. So those are some of the insights that we drill down on. But then from a daily perspective, just trying to keep focus on who is reporting on what's going on in Greensboro and what is being said. Sometimes we have so many different avenues by which the public can communicate to us, depending on what you're looking at, can sometimes give us maybe a lopsided view of what people are actually feeling on a particular subject. So we were able to work with Zencity early into the COVID experience to do a survey, which was very helpful to our city council based on in the question summary was based on our efforts to respond to COVID. Maybe that was as early as April. And then those results were shared in May. And that was helpful to them to get a sense of whether we were in the right direction. We took more aggressive measures than some other neighboring cities in terms of our shutdown and some of the uh, decisions that were made that impacted local business. And of course, everyone's been dealing with this for the last year. But to have the feedback from the community directly on the different areas of the decisions that had been made and the initiatives put forward and the things put in place, it was not this backlash that you would think there was. So they would get emails to the contrary of the survey. So people would email complaining about, when are you going to lift some of these restrictions, or why did you consider this not essential, and on and on. So having the survey and the number of people who responded to our survey was much higher than expected. And that really gave a more realistic framework, I guess, of what people were saying. And they were much more appreciative of the more stringent approach that we took. The daily and media mentions are important as well, because we do have quite a few media outlets within the city limits. So it's often helpful to see what is being tracked within the media realm. But overall, the insight reports are useful because we can really kind of isolate on topics that we are interested in seeing. Where are people from one month to the next? What are their thoughts? So we're kind of shifting a little bit of our focus from the initial response to COVID. Now we're trying to get some feedback or an idea of what are folks thinking in terms of the vaccination. So we've had some pitfalls this week in particular. We had our deployed number of vaccines that were shifted, and a decision made by the state. They took our vaccines and shifted them over to Charlotte. So we were not expecting that. And it was a very, last minute, no notice kind of a decision that was made. So that put everything in turmoil. We had already, created appointments. People were now getting notices saying your appointment's been put on hold, with no real definitive time frame of how long that would be. So yesterday was all about the media response and just trying to get our mayor and our chair of our county commission in front of this to explain what are they doing as our elected leaders to ensure that none of our future deployment of vaccines gets shifted elsewhere. Overall, I would say you can really benefit from Zencity reports based on what the information is that you're trying to extract, and then kind of drill down and look at what the metrics are saying. And it is helpful in terms of where we put more emphasis in one area versus another, or just knowing overall that we're on the right track in terms of policy and just overall day-to-day decision making. Was that my last slide?
Yeah, I think so. Getting ahead of myself there. Well, thank you, Carla. I love what you're doing, because you're taking something of ours that's just an out of the box, product of ours, our daily insights, and sharing them out. And you found a way to do that effectively, which is great. And I hope it's easy for you, and not too time consuming, which I think is part of the beauty in it. And also what you said about the vaccines, I know that I'm sure some people on this call can empathize and with you there, because we're hearing from every city and every county that we work with that this is just a whole big mess that, is so hard to communicate because you guys don't always know yourselves what's going on. So
Yeah,
I'm just,
we're hoping that gets better. We were really trying to convey yesterday that it's kind of a trickle down. So, the lower you get in the government ladder, this is all coming down federally to the state. So the state kind of gives the county some indication, but the state has been given very little, at least in our state, very little direction, very little information. And a lot of times, like I said, decisions have been made at the last minute, and then we are kind of left holding an empty bag. So another thing I'll add is that we're trying to push for the governor's office to recognize Greensboro as a potential mega site where we can kind of set people up through our Coliseum to get people in thousands as far as volume to be able to get the vaccines and run them through, so that we could be regionally a hub, if you will. So we're just trying to get it all worked out, and I'm hoping by next week things will look a lot better.
that's amazing. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
And now I'd love to hear from Jessica from Spokane. This is a different type of reporting, so this is just so many different types, but do you want to start off by telling us about your city?
Yes, so my name is Jessica Fisher. I am the Public Information Assistant for the city of Spokane. Spokane is the second biggest city in Washington state, about 220,000 people. We're about 4 hours east of Seattle and like 20 minutes to the Idaho border. So we're on the east side, excuse me, we're on the east side of the state. I've been using the Zencity's brief mode to create these daily COVID briefs. And these briefs are sent to our partners at the Spokane Regional Health District. And since the pandemic has started, I have created 214 of these. So there's a lot of them. As you see, they're daily briefs. So this helps the regional health district handle misinformation, and then also gather lists of frequently asked questions. And then can you go to the next slide for me? Okay, so on this slide, you'll see kind of an example of the different things we feature in our reports. So all of these briefs include 4 sections. They have local media, which is all of our local news stations and newspapers. So all of the mentions from the day before. We have a Twitter section and a Facebook section, so you can see what official and unofficial unofficial stations are saying about you. And then we also have an analysis by Zencity. And these briefs are super easy to make. You just go to your project. So I go to the coronavirus project, and then I click on brief mode. I'm able to easily change the time frame since these are daily. So I'll just choose the day before. And then I can read through the news articles, bookmark the ones I want to feature, and then bookmark all of the social media posts that are related to coronavirus that maybe have a good question, or maybe they're sharing misinformation that needs to be corrected. And then I also like to include the analysis by Zencity. The best part about this is that the Spokane Regional Health District doesn't have a Zencity account, but with this report, it's really user-friendly for them as well. They're able to click on the news article and it pulls it up directly on, say, the spokesman's website, and they can read the full article there. If they click on a tweet that they're like, oh, that's a good question, maybe we should answer that, they click on the tweet and it opens it directly there and they can answer it right on Twitter. So I think that's very beneficial considering the health district doesn't have a Zencity account. So these briefs are help our local health district monitor media coverage, address misinformation, and then both gather and answer frequently asked questions. The Twitter and Facebook sections are really great for polling the questions, and they often use those questions for their weekly coronavirus press conference. They'll have a frequently asked questions section, or they also do just the facts, where they address those common the common misinformation people are seeing online. Let's also see. Oh, I also really like the word cloud that you see on the site. It helps us monitor what people are saying, and it's really visual, which is, I think, is very helpful for people. Also, I like this section where it has the most popular channels people are getting information. For us, it's usually the local news stations or the public safety pages. And these COVID briefs are also sent to our city communications team, and it kind of helps them stay on top of the media coverage and see kind of what the latest is with COVID. I also want to say that I've used these briefs for other things as well. I've made briefs for different events. I think the most recent one was our windstorm. And I really, in particular, love the sentiment part where you can look at positive versus negative, because as the main person who monitors social media, a lot of the times the comments are really not as encouraging, but to see the sentiment, which includes the sharing and the likes, it really gives me a better perspective and makes me feel a little better. Yeah, and I also really like the insight reports for specific events, but this is what we do for our daily report with the Spokane Regional Health District. And that's it for me.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. So, yeah, so this is the brief tool which you're using, which is kind of our I would say this is like somewhere in between what Whitney and Carla are doing. So Whitney's crafting her own reports, outside of Zencity, but using Zencity data. Carla's using an out of the box email reports that we send out daily. And you're using our tool that enables you to curate your reports, but within Zencity. So you're able to pick and choose the items that you want to include, and do it that way. And like you said, what's great is that if somebody doesn't have a Zencity account and they click on this, it will take them directly to the source. I believe that's also true in the emails that Carla's sending out. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing. What I'd love to do now is I'm just going to go through a summary of some of the tips we've learned from all three of you, for everyone, and then we can open it up to questions. So like I said, this is a tip from Carla to just take the emails that we already offer, that this is kind of the easiest way to go about things, and send them out and onwards to people who might be interested in them, like council, like your city manager, whoever it may be. Sometimes, if they get these emails directly from Zencity, they may ignore them, but if you send them out, they'll know that they're more important. And the next option is to use the brief mode like Jessica. So like she said, you just go to any project, and you click on the brief mode over here, and then you can go through and start curating, what you want to include. Each item, there's this little save button here. So you just click save on what you want to include. I don't know if Jessica, if you're using this, but you can even like annotate things if you want to add notes above things. Yeah.
Yes, you can like flag things. Sometimes I'll flag it and be like, I don't think this is correct. You might want to reply.
Yeah, exactly. So that can be really helpful. Next is, I don't think any of you are doing this, but it is just something I wanted to include, is that you can just take anything from the dashboard and just export it. So if you're just looking at a project and you want to export the entire project, you can do that. That's the export button at the top. Or if you wanted to export any widget, you can do that by clicking on the three dots here. So that's something that you guys can do for any type of report. This is going off of Whitney's model. So just, pulling data from the dashboard into your own format. So this is just showing you kind of where she's taking some of the things that she's doing. And another thing that she's doing, which I love, and she spoke about, was comparing official and unofficial. So that's about, seeing if what your residents are talking about is kind of matching or not matching what you're talking about. So the official source is everything that you're putting out there. Maybe the city is focused on certain topics and the public is focused on something completely different. And it's important to understand that and kind of meet the residents where they're at. So that's something that I think is really a great part of Whitney's reports. And lastly, and everyone mentioned this, are the insights. I think you all have experienced insights. You know that we have our expert team of analysts that will draft these mini reports for you, and we'll send them out either based on your request or not. In case you don't know, this is how you can go in to the dashboard and request. So this is in the insights feed. You can easily go in there and make a request. And it's really important to make that request for when you need it. So if there is an event coming up or there's something being discussed in a council meeting and you want that report ahead of time, just make sure that you go in here and fill out your request and it'll be ready for you in time. And that's something that you can super easy to share out. Again, here there's the export and share buttons on that as well. So that covers everything, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can open it up for questions and I can read all the questions in the Q&A. Does anyone want to get started? Do any of you have questions for each other?
Tracy, I was just going to add another benefit that I have found with Zencity is sometimes like we had an attorney working on something that was seemingly very hot button issue. And he was saying, you know, I just don't know if this is trending anywhere. And I went into see and, you know, we typed every way under the moon, the person's name, the case, the location, the area. And it just turned out to be a dud. Like there was maybe one mention. And this was something that was really stressing him out, thinking, you know, because this again, we have individuals who are very loud and boisterous. And when they start making a ruckus, you think the whole world is hearing them, but it really didn't turn out to be that way. And to be able to give him that assurance was nice because nothing in the Zencity model was trending anywhere. Social media, there was one media mention, and it was even not even detrimental or negative towards the city. It was just stating the facts of the case, and that was the extent of it.
Yeah, I super identify with that. We hear that story all the time. We have well, I think you've probably all heard this by now. We have a term at Zencity. We call them the same 10 people, the people that, you know, are super involved, show up at your council meetings, say that something is a huge problem. And that's kind of the classic use of Zencity is just being able to check that. And maybe it is an issue and maybe it's not an issue, but you want to have a way to get a handle on that. And that's a perfect use case, I think.
Yeah, that's what's so great is you can actually even just type in the subject in Zencity to see what comes up about it, which is so nice to be able to show people, you know, it's really not that big of a deal. Let's not waste our time and resources, you know, on this when it doesn't, it's only like one person saying something. And I also really love creating the projects because anytime, you know, we have something big going out, like right now we're working on our general plan. So we created a project for that to just so we know that we're capturing all of the discourse around the project over the next, you know, however long. So it's really good. And last summer, you know, right kind of before the protesting really popped up, I was seeing rumblings on it and created a project for it. And that worked out really well for us because we were able to capture everything around all the protests that were happening in our city. And it was just really helpful to be able to have that all in one place and kind of see how it was moving, how it was growing, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's perfect. We actually did get a question in here now. How do you recommend dealing with keywords that can have multiple meanings? For example, the word party, meaning people gathering versus the political meeting. So I assume the person asking this is talking about in projects or in the search bar. So one thing that you can do, and we can also do in setting up your projects, is use the categories as a filter. So if we're looking for party with the political meaning, we can use certain categories like political affairs and things like that to make sure that we're getting, you know, the word party, but only from those categories. Another thing that we can do is use minuses. So let's say we want party, but not the political party. We can do minus political, minus Democrat, minus Republican, or whatever it may be. And those are some ways that you can go about to work that out. So great question. And if you're struggling with that and need a little extra help, feel free to reach out to your customer success manager.
Yeah, I've also found when I was at the beginning, when we first started, I would look through all of the kind of discourse around and see how it was categorized too. And I think kind of being able to go through that and check, like, hey, this was about police and protesters in the street, but it's not necessarily like a street safety issue. It's more of a protest issue. So that's what's really great. I would just like flag it and send it in to my rep, and she'd make sure that it got categorized the correct way, so that it would all kind of wash out. I'd see where it really belonged. So that was helpful. But I love the minus tip. I'll have to make sure I use that.
Yeah. Yeah, but like you said, your customer success manager is always there to help out.
Mhm.
We're getting another question. I love the example of frequently asked questions and common misinformation. How do you use Zencity to find this? Do any of you want to take that one?
Well, I think that relates to kind of what I was talking about. So I create these the daily brief, and so in the daily brief, when I go to flag for social media, like the Twitter posts or the Facebook posts I want to do, that includes like unofficial sources, so I can see like someone responding to Spokane Health with maybe something that's incorrect, or maybe it's a good question. And so that way, when the communications professionals at Spokane Regional Health look at the report, they can see that, oh, someone responded with this question, and they can either click on that tweet and reply right there, or they can save that question and use it for their press conference. And also, as Tracy mentioned, I'm even able to like add a little note that will say, hey, this is a good question, or I don't think this is misinformation. You might want to correct it. And that's kind of how I've been helping the health district with the common questions and the misinformation.
Thanks, Jessica. So I think that is it. Unless anybody else wants to ask a last minute question, this is your chance. You guys have been quiet. I was all ready to, jump into the dashboard and answer your questions and show you how to do everything, but you guys are making it easy for me. But like I said, if you do have any follow-up questions and you were too shy to ask today, please reach out to your customer success manager. I think you all know that we love talking to you guys always. Um, and, just everyone, thank you so much for joining. Stay safe, stay healthy, and let us know if you want us to cover any other topics in a future workshop. We're always happy to do this. This came out of a request of clients, and we'd love to do more. So just reach out if you think that there's something else that we can cover in a future workshop. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Bye.